Hello, thank you for tuning in one more time. This is just a repetition of a message that I recorded last night. I had some problems and the audio didn't come out, so I'm going to re-record it. I'm walking home from work right now, so the scripture references that I give, I can give the chapter and verse because I don't have that, I don't have the Bible with me right now. Walking home from work, my tire on my bike went flat, so I have to walk back today. Anyway, what I want to say is, I'm thinking about this, these videos I make about music, and a lot of people comment on these and say that I've made a sort of god out of rock music. No, I also speak against rap, which I've never liked. Speak against reggaeton, which is more Latino music that I've never liked that either, even when I wasn't a Christian. So, and the thing is, I don't only do videos about music. I do videos about a lot of different things. I've done recordings and messages about marriage, remarriage, divorce, widowhood. That's all one message. I've done several messages about repentance, the end times. Many messages that I've done on different topics, and I preach more on a wide variety of topics in Spanish than I do in English because of where I live. So, I'm sure that if I was living in the United States again, maybe I would preach more in English, but I don't, because my main audience is the Spanish-speaking congregation where I preach at, and considering that the majority of people where I live. So this is why some people, Americans in particular, seem to think that I just always talk about music. That's not true. I have several messages on a wide variety of topics, but they're in a language that a lot of people don't speak, so they wouldn't know that. But anyway, what I want to talk about right now specifically is because these people were telling me, that all these groups that they go to, and this time I do want to talk about music again, because it's another point that I haven't specifically addressed. And tell me all these groups, they go to the bars and play, or Ozfest and things like that, specifically the band POD that went to Ozfest, I think in 2000, it was a long time ago, but this was the first band to really do that, and I have videos about POD, and how, they're definitely not Christian at all, although they claim to be. But I'm thinking, look, if I was with, hypothetically speaking, of course, because I don't play any instruments, if I had been invited to Ozfest, if I was, let's say I was playing with POD, and I was invited to Ozfest, I would say, that's fine, but instead of playing for a half hour, 45 minutes, however long they give them to play, I want to preach. I want to give a gospel presentation during that time. Because, and this one I do know specifically, 1 Corinthians 1:21 says, despite the foolishness of preaching, evangelizing through music in an environment where people go to be entertained doesn't work. Because they're not there to hear the lyrics necessarily. They're not there to listen to the lyrics. They're not there to focus on that. They're there to be entertained. That's why they go to Ozfest. That's why they go to places like, I've never been to Hard Rock Cafe, so, but I hear their music there, and so maybe that's, that's why people go there. They go to hear the music. They don't go to be preached at. And you know, I talk to people on Facebook, on YouTube, talk to people that preachers, you know, preachers that are involved with pinpoint evangelism, and another one named James Lehman, Mr. Pleasant Preacher. I talk to these people, and the way that they deal with this is they go to these concerts and they preach. That's what they do. You know, they don't condone this kind of thing either, and I'm not saying that, you know, just because they don't condone it, it's wrong. You know, there's biblical proof, and I've made videos with the biblical proof as to why this idea of Christian rock, Christian rap, Christian, all of, you know, this worldly music is garbage. We're told not to learn the way of the heathen. That's in Jeremiah 10. Ephesians 5, 19 and 20. Colossians 3:16. They tell us what Christian music is. It is not singing about your past. It is not indirect and vague lyrics that could be sung to your girlfriend. It's not something that people have to search through the lyrics for the meaning. That's not Christian music. Christian music is praise and worship to God, or a way to teach and admonish among believers. Okay, Colossians 3:16 clarifies that Christian music, as a ministry, if it were a ministry, it would be internal. It would be within the church, not outside of the church. It's never been a way to evangelize. At least it's never supposed to have been that way. Of course, there are people who are stiff-necked, just like Jehovah said about the Israelites. There are people that are stiff-necked, stubborn, and they will not listen to what God says. And anyone who has been defending this Christian rock, Christian rap, Christian worldly music on any of my videos, that's for you. You know, I mean, you guys are not. You guys are. You know, I think there's a difference between people that are deceived and deceivers. The musicians that are playing this, that have been confronted with the truth and refuse to accept it or even consider it, because many of these musicians do not even consider the idea of what people like me talk about. They think it's ridiculous. And see, the thing is, I came from that to the point where I am now, and I still consider, you know, I don't celebrate Christmas either. I guess since that's coming up in, 2 days, 3 days? It's this week sometime, I know that. I don't celebrate Christmas either, but if someone passes me a link to look about the supposed real origins of Christmas, you know, I've studied many of these things myself, and I know that they come from paganism, and so that is why I don't celebrate Christmas. Apart from the fact that Jesus Christ was not born on December 25th, or close to that even. So that's why I don't celebrate it. But you have these people that will tell you when you say it's from paganism, they'll pass you some other link in defense of it. And I read those. You know, if they ask me to read them, I will read them. I'm not against taking a look at both sides. I mean, I think that's a good thing. It's a way to be informed about both sides and to know what both sides are saying, And if you're wrong, it's a good way to see that you're wrong, you know. But this is, of course, considering that you do this with open eyes. Because if you don't, there's no point in reading it, right? So I'm thinking, you know, these bands, they go and they play in the bars, play at Ozfest, stuff like that. Play their music, they entertain, and while they're entertaining these people, they're going to hell. You know, and as I said, many of these people, they may just be deceived, but the musicians that have been presented with the truth, specifically POD, Pillar, Skillet, 7 Day Slumber, other bands that have been presented with the truth, that what they're doing is not pleasing to God and it's evil even. They don't listen, so then they become deceivers instead of just being deceived. And that's where it gets really, really dangerous, is when they harden their heart so much and they become deceivers, and then they're dragging people to hell with them. But I'm telling you, you know, if these people were to preach instead of actually play in a bar, and give these people a clear gospel presentation instead of some vague lyrics, they would be kicked out. But they would be kicked out for doing what's biblical, not doing what tickles people's ears, you know. So those are just some thoughts on that, you know. My father-in-law has been a musician for decades. He's 50 years old and he's played music almost his entire life. Even before he became Christian, he played with many famous groups in Mexico. I mean, of course, they're famous in Mexico and Latin America, but he's seen both sides of this. And I mean, he plays all kinds of instruments. He plays accordion, organ, trumpet, saxophone, guitar, bass, drums, and others. But I asked him one time, I said, you know, if you go and you start playing a cumbia in a bar with Christian words, I said, what's going to happen? I asked him, because he's a musician. I said, you know, I mean, would it make any sense to do that? Would these people actually listen to the words? You know, will it have any impact on them? He said, no, not at all. That's ridiculous. A professional musician told me that, you know? But of course, and this is the reason that I'm doing this in English, is because it seems like Americans are a lot more hard-headed than anybody else. And because I grew up there and I went to school there, thank God the indoctrination of their school system did not stick with me. Yeah, they seem to think that they're superior and that their ways of doing things are better. Not all of them, but it seems like the majority of them that I've known, and I've known many. I lived in the United States for quite a long time. You know, they're very very stubborn. Very stubborn. Don't like even the thought that they could be wrong. And especially when it comes to something that they like, you know, movies, music. So I've also done videos about movies. So that's where I'm going to leave this. It's just some thoughts. So if you have any questions or comments, just, you know, don't try to start an argument, because I've already cleared up my point in several of my videos. And if you're going to give me any lyrics, you need to tell me who they're from. Otherwise, I'll just block you. Because there's no point in giving me lyrics unless you'll tell me who they're from. I had somebody try to do that a few days ago, and I asked him where they were coming from, and he all of a sudden said that he didn't have time to talk to me. So, anybody who tries to start an argument will be blocked. My point has already been made, so you can either believe the truth or believe a lie. If you believe a lie, well, so goodbye. Have a nice day.